A bag of popcorn costs a theater about 50 cents to make. It sells for $7 or $8. A movie ticket, on the other hand, can leave the theater with single-digit profit margins after the studio takes its cut. If you've ever wondered why theater staff always ask, "Would you like to make that a large?" Now you know the real business isn't the movie, it's what happens at the counter on the way to your seat. To understand exactly how that works, let's follow an operator named Diane, who's about to open her first multiplex in a mid-sized American city and who's already staring down a decision that'll define her margins for the next decade. Diane has $80,000 left in her opening budget and two ways to spend it. She can install one premium 4DX auditorium, or she can build out two additional standard screens. The standard screens are safer. More showtimes, more flexibility. The premium screen is a bet, one that could double her ticket price on a fraction of her seats if enough people show up willing to pay for it. Every theater owner eventually faces some version of this choice, and how they answer it says a lot about the kind of chain they're building. But before Diane can weigh a decision like that, she has to survive the numbers underneath the building itself. A new multiplex built from the ground up with 8 to 12 screens often costs somewhere in the range of $5 to $15 million, depending on location, screen count, and how many luxury seats and premium formats she includes. Renovating an existing building instead can bring that down significantly, sometimes to $1 or $2 million, though she inherits whatever structural limits the old building has. Digital projectors alone are commonly cited in the $60,000 to $100,000 range per screen, and that's before rent, staff wages, insurance, and the heavier utility costs that come with keeping large, dark auditoriums climate-controlled year-round. Before Diane sells a single ticket, she's already committed to 6 or 7 figures a year in fixed costs. So how does a business with overhead like that turn a profit? It comes down to 3 distinct revenue streams, and only one of them is doing most of the work. The first is ticket sales, and this is where most assumptions about theaters fall apart. When someone buys a ticket, the theater doesn't keep most of that money. Studio theater deals are typically structured as a sliding scale that shifts over a film's run, and while the exact terms vary by studio and by film, theaters commonly start with a smaller share in the opening weeks, sometimes as little as 20 to 30%, before that split gradually moves back in the theater's favor as the weeks go on. It's a simplification of deals that get negotiated film by film, but the pattern holds often enough to matter. A theater's most profitable screenings, per ticket, are frequently the smaller crowds still showing up weeks after opening night, not the sold-out premiere. Picture Diane's opening weekend for a big release. The lobby is packed, every showtime is sold out, and on paper it looks like her best weekend of the year. It might not be. If the studio is taking 70% of that box office in week 1, her actual take from all that foot traffic could be smaller than a quiet Tuesday matinee 3 weeks later, once the split has shifted her way. Which brings us to the second revenue stream, and the one actually keeping Diane's lights on: concessions. That 50-cent bag of popcorn selling for $7 or $8 isn't an accident, it's the plan. Fountain drinks with a few cents of syrup and ice routinely sell for $6 or more. Industry estimates commonly put concession margins above 80%, compared to ticket margins that often sit in the single digits after the studio split. Diane's survival depends less on how many tickets she sells and more on how many of those ticket buyers also grab a large popcorn on the way in. That's also why no theater lobby funnels you past the box office and straight to your seat. You walk past the counter because that walk is where the margin lives. The third stream is advertising and premium formats, the piece Diane's $80,000 decision sits inside. Pre-show ads sold to local and national brands add revenue with almost no marginal cost once the screen exists. Premium formats like IMAX, 4DX, or recliner seating let her charge double or triple a standard ticket for an experience that costs only slightly more to deliver. If Diane's premium screen fills even a modest percentage of its seats consistently, it can outperform 2 standard screens on margin alone, even while selling fewer total tickets. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. If concessions carry such enormous margins, why doesn't Diane just raise popcorn prices further and stop worrying about ticket sales? Because the two aren't separate businesses. No ticket sales means no foot traffic, and no foot traffic means nobody at the concession counter. That's the real reason theaters sometimes price tickets low or offer unlimited monthly subscriptions. The goal was never maximizing ticket revenue. It's maximizing how many people walk past that counter.
Now, picture Diane 5 years in. She's covered the fixed costs, she's optimized her concession layout, and business is stable. Then 3 things threaten to undo it, and none of them are things she controls. First, content dependency. Diane doesn't choose which movies get made or when they release. A slow quarter for major films or a string of underperformers hits every theater in the country at once, no matter how well any individual chain is run. Second, the shrinking theatrical window. For most of film history, a movie played exclusively in theaters for around 90 days before appearing anywhere else. That window has compressed sharply in the streaming era, and in some cases, films have landed on streaming platforms simultaneously with or shortly after their theatrical debut. Every day that window shrinks, Diane has less exclusive time to draw an audience before the same film is available on someone's couch. Third, debt. Building or renovating a multiplex takes serious upfront capital, and most chains carry substantial debt to get there. That's manageable in stable years. It becomes dangerous the moment revenue stops and the payments don't. When theaters shut down during the pandemic, chains lost both their ticket and concession revenue overnight, while fixed costs and debt payments kept coming. AMC Theatres, the largest chain in the U.S., took on billions in additional debt just to make it through that period and spent years afterwards stabilizing its finances. This is the part of the business that separates operators who last decades from those who don't. It has almost nothing to do with picking good movies, since every theater in a market usually has access to the same films. It has everything to do with how much debt an operator is carrying when the bad year arrives. Because in this industry, a bad year isn't a risk to hedge against, it's a certainty on a delay.
So, what does profitability actually look like once all of this shakes out? Industry estimates commonly place operating margins for a well-run modern theater with strong concessions and at least a few premium screens somewhere around 10 to 15% in a healthy year. That figure moves a lot depending on location, local competition, and how much debt the operator is servicing. It's a respectable margin. It's also a fragile one, easily erased by one slow box office quarter or an unplanned cost spike. The chains that have survived streaming and then survived the pandemic on top of it tend to share the same 3 habits. They diversified revenue beyond ticket sales early, they treated premium formats as a serious investment rather than a gimmick, and they kept their debt conservative enough to still be standing when the bad year showed up, because it always does. If you were Diane, would you have spent that $80,000 on the premium screen or played it safe with 2 more standard ones? There's no universally right answer, but the operators who've lasted decades in this business tend to have a clear-eyed reason for whichever choice they made, instead of drifting into it. The movie theater business was never really about movies. It was always about foot traffic, concessions, and the discipline to still be open the next time someone declares the industry dead.